Anna, May Carter grew up in a house where silence hurt more than shouting. Her stepmother's voice carried sharp as broken glass, each word meant to remind Anna May she was unwanted. The woman resented the brightness of her laughter, the way her singing could turn a dull afternoon into something alive. Her father, worn down by years in the mill and too weary to fight, let the cruelty stand. He never stepped between them, never lifted his hand or voice to shield her. In that shotgun house near the edge of the parish, Anna May learned what it meant to live unseen, unheard. But she was not a girl who broke easily. Her spirit, though pressed down, still sparked in moments of laughter when she could steal them. Sometimes she sang low while scrubbing floors, her voice like a secret prayer. Yet each note risked punishment, and soon even her songs became something she folded tight and hid away. When Virgil Crowther came calling, no one knew his history. He appeared one cold winter, a stranger with a dark beard and a gaze that revealed nothing but weight. His boots carried the swamp mud of places farther than anyone cared to walk, and his money, real, tangible bills, spoke louder than the questions people should have asked. He told her father he lived upriver, past the gas stations, past the last store where anyone might stop for bread or nails, out where the road dissolved into dirt and cypress roots. He wanted a wife, he said, someone hardworking, quiet, steady. He had a boy that needed minding. Her father glanced at the envelope on the table, heavy with cash. He didn't ask where it came from. He didn't look at Anna May when he said this was for the best. The stepmother smirked, her relief naked as sunlight, as though she'd shed a burden at last. Anna May's heart folded in on itself. She had no say, no path to refuse. She packed what little she owned, the threadbare dress, the comb her mother once left behind, and kept her chin steady. If this was escape from the bitterness of Sycamore Street, then so be it. Somewhere deep inside, she nursed the hope that perhaps, beyond the swamps and silence, she might find a life that was gentler. The road to Virgil's house grew narrower with each mile. Trees pressed close, their limbs dripping Spanish moss like gray curtains hiding whatever lay beyond. Cypress knees jutted up from the mud like the bones of old giants. The air smelled of water left too long in a jar, damp and heavy. By the time the wagon turned onto the last stretch, daylight had thinned to a weak gold, and Anna May saw the outline of a house rising out of the marshland. It was a grand house once, long ago, built when sugar money ran thick through the South. Now it sagged under time's weight. Boards warped, shutters leaned, paint peeled into flakes the color of ash. Yet it stood solid, unyielding, its porch wide enough to hold watch over the brown sweep of river just beyond the levee. Anna May stepped down, her boots sinking slightly into the wet earth. 3 large hounds rose from the shadows of a pen, their eyes catching the last of the light, yellow and sharp. They did not bark. They only stared, tails stiff, bodies taut, as though they measured her worth. Virgil called them off with a short whistle. Their silence was worse than noise. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and iron. No curtains softened the windows, no flowers sat in jars. The rooms were spare, neat, too clean, as if scoured of anything that might suggest warmth. Virgil's footsteps echoed heavy on the boards. He said little, only pointed out where she would sleep, where the boy stayed, what chores would be hers. Eli Crowther appeared in the doorway, a thin child with eyes too wide, too knowing for his years. He said nothing. He did not even move closer, only watched, a shadow of his father in miniature. Anna May's chest tightened, though she offered him the smallest of smiles. Later, as dusk deepened and the swamp grew loud with frogs and cicadas, Anna May stood on the porch. She breathed in the night air, thick and wet, and for a moment let a hum slip past her lips, soft and trembling. A tune she had carried since girlhood. Virgil's voice cut through it like a blade. No singing. The words struck harder than a slap. She turned, saw him standing behind her, eyes flat, the dogs restless in their pen. He stepped closer, lowering his tone until it pressed against her skin. "This house stays quiet." The swamp whispered around them. The river slid past in silence, and the dogs resumed their stillness. Anna May swallowed the song, folded it back into the quiet that had shaped her life. Somewhere inside, though, she clung to a small ember of hope. Perhaps the silence here would not swallow her whole. Perhaps in the stillness of the Louisiana night, she might yet carve a space to breathe. The days in Virgil Crowther's house soon folded into one another, like pages pressed too tightly together. The silence he demanded was not the silence of peace, but of a graveyard. Each morning he rose before dawn, his boots heavy on the wooden floorboards, and left without a word of where he went. When he was home, his presence filled the house like storm clouds, dark, unpredictable, waiting to break. Anna May learned quickly that even the softest hum, the smallest sound of comfort, could draw his anger. One evening, as she bent over the wash basin, a tune slipped out of her, barely a breath, barely music at all. Virgil's chair scraped the floor behind her, the sound harsh as steel. He didn't shout this time. He only stood, eyes narrowing, lips pressed tight. The message was clear. She stopped mid-note, hands shaking in the suds. From then on, she guarded her voice as carefully as a secret. His temper was a living thing, striking without warning. Once, when a loose shutter rattled in the wind, he stormed through the hall and slammed it shut so violently the frame splintered. Another time, when Eli tripped and spilled a cup of water, Virgil's roar filled the house like thunder. The boy froze, wide-eyed, shoulders hunched as if bracing for a blow. Though Virgil did not strike him then, the rage that poured out left the air scarred for hours. Eli himself was a strange, quiet shadow of a child. His hair stuck to his forehead in the damp, his thin frame swallowed by shirts too large. He followed Anna May with his eyes, but his lips never parted to form words. She tried at first to coax a sound, but the boy only shrank back, fear plain as daylight. Virgil had forbidden speech, had carved silence into the very walls. "The boy's fine as he is," he told her, his voice sharp. "No talk in this house. None." But when Virgil was gone, and he often was, Anna May dared to break that rule. She would sit with Eli on the floor, spreading cornmeal across a board, tracing letters into the grain. Her finger drew simple shapes, A for apple, E for Eli. The boy's eyes followed every stroke, curious, trembling. Sometimes she whispered words, soft as lullabies, and hummed old songs from her childhood. At first, he only listened, head cocked like a sparrow. Then, slowly, he began to mimic, his small hand following hers through the cornmeal. A murmur, no louder than the rustle of leaves, formed on his lips. It was not much, but to Anna May it was a spark in the darkness. Those stolen moments were the only warmth in the house. Outside, the swamp sang with frogs and cicadas. Inside, Anna May tried to teach a boy to claim his own voice. She knew if Virgil discovered it, his wrath would fall on them both. Yet she could not stop. To let the boy grow in silence seemed crueler than any punishment. There were other shadows, too, hints that something in Virgil's life was not as it seemed. He kept no garden, no hens in the yard, no hogs in the pen. The smokehouse stood empty, the fields behind the house lay bare. He hunted now and then, but never enough to feed them long. And yet, week after week, the pantry never emptied. He returned from his absences with sacks of flour, meat, coffee, always paid for in cash. The bills were worn, old, sometimes stained, and he tucked them into a locked chest he kept close at hand. Anna May asked once, lightly, where he managed to buy supplies so far from town. His gaze snapped to hers, flat and cold, and she felt the answer die on her tongue. "You mind the house," he said. "You mind the boy. I'll mind the rest." She never asked again. But in the quiet hours, as Eli traced shaky letters in the cornmeal and the swamp wind pressed against the shutters, Anna May wondered. Where did the money come from? Why did Virgil guard it so closely, like a man guarding not just his fortune, but his very life? The thought gnawed at her, though she kept it locked inside. At night, when Virgil's footsteps echoed heavy through the house, she lay awake listening to the dogs outside. Their low growls rose and fell in the dark, a chorus of watchmen guarding secrets she had not yet uncovered. She pulled the thin quilt over Eli's small body and prayed her whispers had not been overheard. The silence of that house was no longer emptiness, it was a cage. And in that cage, both she and the boy lived under Virgil's shadow, each day hoping for a crack of light. Virgil left before dawn, his boots thudding down the porch steps, the dogs whining low as he set off upriver. He said nothing of when he would return. The sound of his wagon faded into the cypress dark, leaving Anna May with Eli and the long stretch of silence that filled every corner of the house. At first, the day passed quietly. She swept the rooms, stirred the fire, and let Eli play with a small block of wood on the floor. With Virgil gone, the air felt lighter, almost breathable. She even allowed herself a tune, soft and low, while kneading dough. Eli's eyes lit up at the sound, his lips twitching as if he wanted to catch the melody. She smiled at him, whispering the words as if they were secrets meant only for the two of them. But as the light drained from the swamp and the shadows grew long, unease settled over the house. The wind whistled through the shutters, carrying the smell of wet earth. The dogs outside shifted restlessly in their pen, growling at nothing Anna May could see. She tried to calm Eli with supper, but he ate in silence, eyes darting toward the dark windows. Night deepened, heavy and slow. The fire popped in the hearth, its light flickering across the bare walls. Anna May had just begun to think of bed when Eli stiffened. His small body froze, spoon halfway to his mouth, eyes fixed on the window. "What is it, baby?" she whispered, but the words felt brittle in the air. She followed his gaze. At first there was only darkness pressed against the glass, thick as tar. Then movement, something shifting just beyond the pane. A shadow, quick, too close. Anna May's breath caught. The dogs erupted, snarling, their paws thudding against the wood of the pen. Eli whimpered, sliding from his chair, pressing himself against her skirts. Anna May rose, her hands trembling as she reached for the shotgun propped against the wall. Virgil had left it loaded. She stood in the middle of the room, heart hammering. The window stared back at her, blank now, only her reflection shimmering in the firelight. She told herself it was nothing. Branches swaying, swamp mist curling too thick. But the weight in her chest said otherwise. Someone had been there, watching. The night stretched into hours. She did not dare close her eyes. With Eli curled against her lap, she sat rigid on the bench, the shotgun across her knees. Every creak of the house, every sigh of the wind pressed into her nerves. She heard crunching outside, faint like footsteps in wet earth. Once, she thought she heard a knock, so soft it might have been her imagination. But Eli stirred at the sound too, clutching her arm, and she knew it was real. The fire burned low. The shadows thickened. Her body ached from stillness, but she did not move. She prayed silently, words tumbling in her head without form. The boy slept fitfully, twitching against her side. When the first gray threads of dawn began to slip through the shutters, relief washed over her so strong she nearly wept. The world outside looked innocent in daylight. Mist curled low over the ground, and the river glinted dull pewter under the pale sky. Anna May stepped onto the porch, Eli's hand gripping hers tight. The dogs whined, exhausted from a night of pacing, their eyes bloodshot. She scanned the yard, heart still racing. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then her gaze dropped to the earth near the steps. There, imprinted clearly in the damp soil, were footprints. Not boots, not shoes, bare feet, small, narrow, as if a child had walked through the night with nothing to shield them from the cold ground. The tracks led toward the window where Eli had first stared, then curved away into the cypress gloom. Anna May's breath hitched. Her mind scrambled for reason. Perhaps neighborhood children, though none lived this far out. Perhaps hunters, though what hunter would go barefoot in the swamp at night? None of it made sense. Eli tugged at her skirt, eyes wide, silent. He too had seen them. She backed slowly into the house, bolting the door behind her. The sight of those prints stayed etched in her mind, sharper than any nightmare. For the rest of the morning, she moved through her chores in a fog, listening for sounds she could not name. There was no denying it now. The night had left more than fear. It had left proof that something, or someone, walked the grounds unseen. The house had always been quiet. Now it felt haunted. That night the dream came heavy, pressing down on Anna May's chest like a weight she could not lift. She saw the swamp under a white veil, the cypress trees bone pale in moonlight. And there, at the edge of the clearing, stood a woman. Her hair was long, the color of embers, catching the light as though each strand burned. She wore a white dress that shifted in the cold wind, thin fabric clinging to her narrow frame. The woman's face was hollow, unreadable, but her hand rose slowly, deliberately, and pointed into the dark woods. Anna May tried to call out, but her voice failed her. The woman's lips did not move, yet the silence spoke. That finger, rigid as a command, directed her gaze toward the deepest part of the swamp, a place where even the dogs would not roam. She jolted awake, her body slick with sweat, though the night air was damp and cold. For a moment, she thought it was only the dream lingering in her bones. But then Eli stirred beside her, restless, as if he too had been touched by something unseen. Morning came gray and heavy. Anna May went out to fetch water, her hands still trembling from the vision. The mist clung to the yard, curling around the porch posts like fingers. And there, caught on the low branch of a cypress tree, was a shred of fabric. She froze. The cloth was pale, weathered, fluttering in the breeze. Her mind flashed back to the dream, the white dress, the way it clung to the red-haired figure. The fabric on the branch was torn, ragged, yet it was the same ghost-white hue. Anna May crossed herself without thinking, her breath quick and shallow. She plucked the cloth free and held it in her hands, her heart drumming as though she'd stolen something forbidden. It smelled faintly of damp earth, of rot, of years lost in the swamp. Inside, Virgil sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee. His eyes lifted to the scrap in her hand, and for the first time she saw something flicker across his face. Not surprise, not fear, but irritation, like a man interrupted in thought. "What's this?" Anna May asked softly, though the answer already burned inside her. He set the cup down hard enough that the liquid spilled over the rim. "Lillian," he said flatly, "my first wife." The name hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. Anna May felt her blood turn cold. Virgil leaned back, his gaze fixed on her in a way that made her skin crawl. She wandered into the woods one winter, lost her way, froze to death. That's all. His tone brooked no questions, final as a nailed coffin. But Anna May could not stop the shiver that ran through her. The dream, the pointing finger, the fabric that matched the dress. None of it felt like coincidence. She stared at the scrap in her hand, the weave fraying between her fingers, and thought of a woman whose voice had been smothered by the same silence, now choking her. She glanced at Eli. The boy sat at the edge of the table, his eyes dark, fixed on the cloth as though he recognized it. His mother's dress, his mother's ghost. Anna May pressed the fabric flat against the table, her breath quickening. She wanted to ask more, wanted to know how a woman could vanish in woods she had walked all her life, how she could leave behind nothing but silence and a child forbidden to speak. But Virgil's glare pinned her in place. His jaw flexed, his hand tightening around the coffee cup until it seemed it might shatter. "Don't bring her up again," he said, his voice low, dangerous. Anna May nodded, though her heart rebelled. The cloth lay between them like a curse, a warning carried from the grave. She folded it carefully, hid it away in her apron pocket, and said no more. But inside her the dread grew. She thought of Lillian's face in the dream, pale and hollow, the finger pointing into the darkness. She thought of the footprints outside the window, bare and small, too human to be beast, too strange to belong to any living soul. And for the first time, Anna May understood what it meant to fear not only her husband, but the house itself, the land itself. If Lillian's ghost was calling to her, it was not out of malice. It was a warning, and warnings meant danger. As she lay awake that night, listening to the dogs shift restlessly and the swamp wind sigh against the walls, Anna May realized a truth that made her blood run colder than any winter storm. If she stayed, she might share Lillian's fate. Virgil came home drunk one night, the kind of drunk that loosened his tongue and turned his eyes glassy with madness. He staggered through the door, the dogs barking as though they, too, felt the storm rolling in. He dropped himself into the chair by the table, the smell of whiskey filling the room, and began to mutter. At first it was the usual, grumbling about the neighbors upriver, though none existed, cursing at debts no one had asked about. But then his words shifted, slippery with liquor, tumbling out into the open like stones he had tried too long to keep buried. Lillian, he slurred, the name thick on his tongue. Thought she could talk back to me, thought she could sing her fool songs. He laughed, a low, bitter sound that chilled Anna May where she stood. I showed her. I put her out. One night, dead of winter. Just her and the cold. She never came back. He said it as though it were nothing, as though sending a woman to her death was no more than tossing out yesterday's scraps. His eyes gleamed with a kind of pride, and his fist slammed the table hard enough to rattle the plates. Anna May felt the blood drain from her face. She had heard whispers in his anger, caught shadows of the truth, but to hear it spoken plain was something else. He had not lost his wife. He had killed her with cruelty sharpened by drink and rage. And now Anna May lived under the same roof, bound to the same silence, and she knew, if his wrath turned fully on her, she would end the same way. That night she barely slept. Even when the bottle dragged him into unconsciousness, his words crawled through her mind like a fever. She lay stiff beside Eli, listening to the child's breathing, wondering how much he remembered of that night, how much his silence carried. The next day, with Virgil gone again, she busied herself with chores, trying to drive away the dread. She swept the floors, pushed back the heavy bench by the table, and bent low to scrub at the planks. That was when she noticed it, boards that did not sit flush with the others. They shifted slightly under her weight, as though something lay hidden beneath. Her heart thumped in her chest. She hesitated, then pried at the edge with the knife she carried for peeling vegetables. The board lifted easily, revealing a dark space beneath. She leaned down, eyes wide. There, half buried in dust, sat an old iron pot, and inside it gold, coins stacked, dull but unmistakable, their surfaces catching what little light slipped through the cracks. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, enough to explain the sacks of food, the steady stream of cash. Anna May's breath caught. She reached out, almost without meaning to, fingers brushing the cold metal. A chill ran through her, sharp and unnatural, as though the pot itself recoiled at her touch. She pulled back quickly, her pulse hammering. It made sense now. Why Virgil never farmed, never hunted more than he pleased. Why he guarded the house so fiercely. The gold was his lifeblood, his secret. But with it came something else, something that darkened him, sharpened his anger into something monstrous. That night, the signs grew stronger. Eli stirred in his sleep, whispering sounds too soft to be words. The dogs paced restlessly in their pen, hackles raised though nothing stirred in the yard. Anna May lay awake, and through the thin slats of the shutters, she swore she saw movement again, a pale shadow gliding past, the shape of a woman lingering at the edge of the trees. In the silence that followed, there came a sound. Faint footsteps across the porch. She held her breath, clutching Eli close, listening. The boards creaked as though someone barefoot walked inches from where she lay. Then nothing. Morning revealed no visitor, only more prints in the damp earth. Bare, small, pressed deep into the mud as if by a foot colder than ice. They trailed from the porch to the tree line and vanished into the cypress. Anna May's hands shook as she traced the marks with her eyes. The dream, the fabric, Virgil's drunken confession, the hidden gold, each piece folded into the next, painting a picture she could no longer deny. The past was not buried here. It walked, it watched, and it waited. And she knew now, more than ever, that the curse binding Virgil Crowther's house did not come only from his fists or his rage. It came from the gold hidden beneath the floorboards, a treasure rotting his soul from within, feeding on him until he was more monster than man. Anna May turned her gaze toward the swamp, where the mist curled heavy and gray. She thought of Lillian pointing in her dream, warning her, begging her to see. The danger was no longer in shadows. It was here, in the very bones of the house. And if she stayed, she would not only live under Virgil's cruelty, she would inherit the same fate as the woman who had come before her. Virgil returned before dusk, his boots pounding against the porch as though the house itself had offended him. Anna May felt her chest tighten the moment he crossed the threshold. His eyes were wild, darting, his breath ragged. The dogs in the pen howled, sensing the storm before she could. He didn't remove his coat, didn't sit. Instead, his gaze swept the floor with a feverish intensity. Then it landed on the boards she had touched. "You," he barked, voice cracked with rage. "You been in my things." Anna May froze, her hands trembling around the pot she held. "No," she whispered. "I haven't touched. Don't lie to me." His roar filled the room, shaking the thin walls. He strode forward, looming over her, the smell of whiskey and swamp clinging to him. His eyes burned, and for the first time she understood that he wasn't only angry, he was afraid. "You touched my money," he hissed, spit flying, his face so close she could feel the heat of his fury. "You went where you weren't meant to. If you took even one coin," he slammed his fist against the wall, the sound like a gunshot, "I'll kill you where you stand." Eli whimpered from the corner, his small body shrinking into the shadows. Virgil's head snapped toward the sound, and his rage deepened. "Even the boy knows. You've ruined everything." Anna May's heart pounded. She knew there was no reasoning with him now. She could see it in his eyes. He had crossed into that place where fury left no room for mercy. He lunged, his hands reaching for her throat. Instinct took over. Anna May shoved the chair between them and snatched Eli into her arms. "Run," she gasped, though the word never fully left her lips. She bolted for the door. Virgil roared behind her, the crash of wood splitting as he overturned the table in his fury. She threw the bolt, yanked the door wide, and plunged into the night with Eli clutched tight against her chest. The swamp air was sharp with cold, mist rising from the riverbank. Anna May's feet struck mud and root, her lungs burning as she ran. Behind her came the crash of footsteps, heavy and relentless, and then, worse, the release of the hounds. Their baying split the night, low and hungry. Eli buried his face into her shoulder, sobbing soundlessly. She stumbled forward, heart breaking at the thought that the boy's last memory might be of this flight. Then she saw them, prints in the mud, faint but clear, bare feet, small, leading into the dark woods. The same she had seen at dawn, the same that haunted her dreams. With no other path, she followed, praying that whatever spirit left them would not lead her into ruin. The hounds closed in, their snarls vibrating through the trees. Anna May stumbled, clutching Eli, bracing for teeth and claws. But when the dogs burst through the underbrush, something unexplainable happened. They didn't attack. They circled her and the boy, their eyes glowing in the moonlight, teeth bared, not at her, but at the darkness behind. Their bodies formed a wall between her and Virgil's pursuit, growls rumbling like thunder. One pressed its flank against her leg, nudging her forward, urging her on. Anna May's breath caught. For a moment, she thought she saw something beyond the dogs, a pale figure at the tree line, hair the color of flame, lifting an arm to point deeper into the swamp. Virgil's voice held in the distance, curses tearing through the night. The dogs answered with barks sharp as gunfire, driving him back. Anna May stumbled onward, Eli clinging to her neck, her legs sinking in mud and roots. The prince glowed faint in the moonlight, guiding her step by step. The swamp that had once felt like a prison now became her only hope. And though fear twisted her stomach, a sliver of belief rooted itself inside her. She was not running alone. Something beyond flesh and blood was leading her, guarding her, turning Virgil's own hounds against him. The night was heavy, the path treacherous, but Anna May no longer felt only terror. She felt the faintest pulse of defiance of life. For the first time since stepping into Virgil Crowther's house, she believed she might escape. The swamp seemed endless. Roots rose like claws from the mud. Water pooled black between the cypress knees, and every step Anna May took threatened to drag her down. Eli clung to her neck, his small body heavy against her chest, his silent tears dampening her shoulder. Her lungs burned, but she pressed forward, each stride fueled by the terror of Virgil's roar echoing somewhere behind them. The dogs flanked her like guardians, their bodies weaving through the dark underbrush. They growled at the night, their hackles raised toward the direction of pursuit, but not once did they turn on her. The sight of them, Virgil's own beasts turned protectors, was both terrifying and miraculous. The prints in the mud pulled her deeper, bare feet leading toward some unseen salvation. Moonlight cut slivers through the moss-draped branches, just enough to keep her from stumbling blind. Still, roots snagged her skirt, branches clawed her arms, and once she nearly fell face first into a pool of stagnant water. She bit down on her fear, clutched Eli tighter and pressed on. Then came the river, wide, sluggish in the summer, but now half-skinned with thin plates of ice that cracked like breaking bones when the dogs stepped near. Mist crawled across its surface, hiding its true depth. Anna May's heart sank. To cross it was madness. To stay meant death. Virgil's voice carried faintly through the trees, closer now, a string of curses that seemed to seep into the very fog. Eli whimpered, clutching her tighter. She looked to the tree line, desperate, and there, just beyond the mist, she saw her. Lillian. The red hair gleamed like fire in moonlight, her white dress stirring though there was no wind. She stood on the far bank, silent, her arm extended, finger pointing, not accusing but beckoning. Come. Anna May's knees buckled. For a heartbeat, she thought her mind had broken under fear. But then Eli's head lifted from her shoulder, his eyes wide, and she knew he saw too. The child did not speak, but his tiny hand reached toward the vision, as though toward a mother he half remembered. The ice groaned under her first step, splintering beneath her boots. She moved carefully, clutching Eli high, whispering prayers under her breath. The dogs padded onto the frozen surface, their weight steady, their eyes never leaving hers. Step by step they crossed. The ice cracked, water rising through jagged seams. At one point her leg plunged knee-deep into the river's freezing grip, and she nearly lost her balance. Eli cried out without sound, his small fingers digging into her shoulder. "Hold on, baby!" she gasped, dragging herself free, pushing forward despite the fire of cold burning her limbs. Behind them came the thrash of pursuit. Virgil's shadow moved along the riverbank, his lantern swinging wild. His curses cut through the night, demanding obedience, demanding the return of what he had claimed. But the swamp would not give them back. At last her boots struck solid ground. The ice behind her groaned in one final protest before shattering under Virgil's weight. His lantern swung. His shout ripped through the fog, but she did not look back. She ran, the dogs bounding at her side, Eli clinging like a second heartbeat against her chest. Hours blurred into one another. The swamp seemed determined to keep them, to twist their path into circles. But always, just at the corner of her sight, she glimpsed the pale shape of Lillian's dress, guiding her forward. Once, when she faltered from exhaustion, she felt the brush of something cool against her hand, urging her to rise again. By the time dawn bled into the sky, Anna May stumbled out of the trees and onto a dirt road. Her legs shook, her body bruised. But ahead lay the outline of cabins, small houses clustered around a chapel steeple, smoke curling from chimneys. She nearly collapsed, but the dogs pressed against her legs, steadying her. Eli raised his head, his wide eyes taking in the sight of people moving about. Real people, not shadows. For the first time in days, his face softened. A woman hurried toward them, skirts lifted from the mud, her hair dark and streaked with gray. She looked from Anna May to Eli, her eyes widening with recognition. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, her voice catching. "That's Lillian's boy." Anna May swayed, unsure whether she stood in safety or deeper danger. But the woman reached out, steadying her arm. "I'm Clara May Johnson," she said softly. "Lillian was my sister. You're safe now." The words struck Anna May like a benediction. Her knees gave way, and for the first time since fleeing the house by the river, she let herself weep. Clara May Johnson's cabin was warm with the smell of wood smoke and herbs drying from the rafters. After days of swamp chill, the air itself felt like a blessing. Anna May sat near the fire, Eli curled against her side, while Clara May poured steaming cups of chicory coffee. Her hands were steady, but her eyes, dark and searching, rarely left the boy. "That's Lillian's child," Clara May said at last, her voice low. "I'd know those eyes anywhere." She touched Eli's hair with trembling fingers. "My sister's boy. Anna may know that." The boy pressed closer into her arm, wary of the stranger, but did not resist her touch. Clara May sank into a chair across from them, her gaze heavy with memory. "You don't have to tell me what happened," she continued. "I know Virgil. I know what he became." Anna May's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but the words clung like thorns. Clara May seemed to sense her silence and filled it with her own. "It started with that cursed gold," Clara May said, staring into the fire. "Virgil found it years ago, digging near the old levee where the Spanish once buried their plunder. People said the land was marked, that treasure left in the swamp carried the devil's breath. But Virgil, he wouldn't listen. He took it all, brought it into the house, thought it would buy him power, freedom." Her eyes darkened. What it bought was madness. He grew secretive, hard, like something hollowed him out. Lillian, she tried to reach him. She begged him to leave it, to burn it, to walk away. But he clung tighter, and when her voice rose against him, when she sang, when she dreamed of taking Eli and leaving, he turned cruel. He said she was cursed, that her very presence threatened his hold. And one winter's night, Clara May's voice faltered. He put her out, let the cold finish what his fists would not. Anna May's breath caught, her heart hammering against her ribs. It was the story she had feared, spoken now with the weight of truth. Clara May looked at Eli again, tears shining in her eyes. "Before she died, Lillian told me something. She said if the swamp took her, she wouldn't leave her boy alone. She swore she'd find a way back to him, even if only as a shadow." The words struck Anna May like a tremor through her bones. The dreams, the footprints, the pale figure at the river. All of it came rushing back. She understood now. It wasn't madness or chance. Lillian's spirit had walked beside her, guiding her steps, shielding Eli when no one else could. She bowed her head, clutching Eli to her chest. He tilted his face up, silent but searching, and she pressed her lips to his hair. "Your mama never left you," she whispered, though her voice cracked. "She led us here." Clara May nodded slowly, her face etched with sorrow and resolve. "Virgil won't let go easy. He's bound to that gold. Bound and damned. He'll come hunting when he realizes you slipped free. But we won't let him take Eli. Not while I breathe." Anna May met her gaze across the fire, two women bound now by more than blood or marriage. Bound by the promise to protect a child marked by both curse and love. Outside, the swamp wind rattled the shutters, as though reminding them the danger was not yet gone. Anna May's shoulders stiffened. The fear inside her had not vanished, but it had changed shape. It was no longer the helpless dread of a woman trapped in silence. It was sharper now, steadier, the fear of a mother who would fight. She looked at Eli, then back at Clara May. "He won't take him back," she said firmly. "Not while I'm here." The fire popped, sending sparks upward. Clara May laid a hand on her arm, strong and sure. "Then we'll be ready." That night, as Anna May lay in a bed softer than she had known in years, she did not dream of Lillian's hollow face. Instead, she dreamt of her standing tall in the clearing, hair blazing, pointing the way not into darkness but towards safety. For the first time, Anna May woke with the sense that perhaps she had a chance, not only to survive, but to break the cycle that had claimed the woman before her. Virgil Crowther never came to the village. Days passed, then weeks, and though Anna May's heart clenched with dread at every sound beyond the treeline, his shadow never appeared. The swamp itself seemed to swallow him, as if the land had decided it was finished with him. Word reached the village one gray morning. A trapper had found him deep in the cypress woods, sitting upright against a tree, his lantern extinguished at his side. His body was stiff, eyes wide open, frost clinging to his beard though the night had not been cold enough to kill a man. The dogs that had once served him lay scattered around, silent and still, their breaths long extinguished. The description chilled Anna May. Virgil's pose was too familiar, his back braced, his body hardened by the elements, his face frozen into an expression of disbelief. It mirrored what Clara May had once whispered about Lillian, that they had found her the same way, alone in the winter swamp, as if life had left her in mid-breath. Only this time there was no mystery, no accident. Anna May felt it in her bones. His end had not come from hunger or weather or fate. It was something older, deeper, the same force that had led her through the swamp, that had left footprints in the mud, that had guarded Eli when no one else would. The curse he had carried, the blood on his hands, had finally claimed him. Justice, in its own quiet and merciless form, had arrived. The villagers buried him in the far edge of the swamp without ceremony. No one spoke words over the grave. No one marked the spot with stone or cross. The swamp closed around it, moss creeping, water rising, as if erasing him from memory. For Anna May, life began to take on a rhythm she had never known. Clara May welcomed her into the cabin as though she were kin, and the small village wrapped itself around Eli with a gentleness he had never tasted. For the first time, the boy laughed, an awkward, halting sound that burst out one afternoon when other children pulled him into a game near the chapel yard. Anna May wept quietly at the sound, for it was proof that silence did not own him forever. Eli began to speak, words first broken, then stronger, as though each syllable carried him further from his father's shadow. He learned the names of the children who played with him, called Clara May Andy, and, when Anna May least expected it, whispered Mama into her ear as he clung to her side. The word was hesitant, but it rooted deep inside her. Anna May, too, found a new kind of peace. She sang again, softly at first, her voice trembling as though afraid to be heard. But no hand struck her down, no voice silenced her. The songs grew stronger, weaving through the cabin, filling it with a warmth that neither curse nor cruelty could snuff out. Sometimes, when she walked with Eli along the road, she thought she felt eyes upon her. Not the heavy gaze of Virgil, but something gentler. Once, on a still morning, she saw a white bird lift from the trees near the riverbank. Its wings gleamed in the sun, and for a moment its flight traced the same motion as a hand pointing the way. Her heart swelled. She knew then that Lillian had found rest. The promise she had made to never leave her child alone had been fulfilled. She had guided them through terror and shadow, delivered them into safety. And now, with Eli laughing, with Anna May singing, her spirit could lift free. Life in the village was not grand. Days were filled with chores, chopping wood, drawing water, mending clothes. But the quiet here was not suffocating. It was the quiet of peace, not of fear. Anna May carried that peace carefully, as though it were treasure more precious than any gold hidden in the earth. On an afternoon washed in soft sunlight, she stood outside Clara May's cabin, watching Eli chase after the other children, his laughter rising bright against the steady hum of cicadas. She closed her eyes, breathed deep, and felt the weight of her past finally loosen. The swamp had taken much from her, but it had also given her back a life reshaped and reclaimed. High above, the white bird circled once before vanishing into the blue. Anna May lifted her gaze, and a smile broke across her face. The future stretched open like a field after storm, tender and waiting. At last she was free.